Thank you for joining me. My name is Mr. Sika. Here to take you on core math. We are going to treat a topic titled plane geometry. Plane geometry. And under it, we'll be looking at angles. Now we'll be looking at under angles. Our subtopic will be looking at definition of angles, examples of angles, and after that we'll also be looking at paths of angles. That is how angles are formed, and then paths of angles. So we'll be looking at definition, of angles. We'll be looking at paths of angles. Okay. Now let's look at definition of angle. So what comes to mind is, what is an angle? What is an angle? Before we move on to the definition of angle, let's try to find out the root word for angle, or what is the Latin word for angle. And the Latin word for angle is angulus. Angulus, A-N-G-U-L-U-S, angulus. It's a Latin word which means crux or corner. Crook or corner. So we have an idea. When we talk about angle, when we talk of an angle, or when we talk about angle, we are looking at, we mean crook or corner. That's a direct translation from Latin, angulus. Okay. So what then is an angle? We say an angle measures the amount of turns. It measures the amount of turns. Or an angle, it is the amount of turns between each arms. It is the amount of turns between each arms. So let me write the first one. Angle. It measures the amount of turns. That's an angle. Or it is the amount of turns between each arms. It is the amount of turns between each arms. between each arms. It measures the amount of turns, or it is the amount of turns between each arms. Okay. We can also say that an angle measures the amount between two rays meet on a plane. It measures the amount between two rays on a plane at a point. It measures the amount between two rays. That meet on a plane at a point. Good. Now, when we talk about a plane is just a flat surface. A flat surface. When we talk about rays, we are talking about straight lines. On a flat surface, whenever you put a vertical object, an object in a vertical dimension or in a horizontal dimension, the idea is that when that vertical object or that object in a vertical dimension meets or intercept or meet another object in a horizontal dimension, when they meet at a point, the measurement between them, these two objects, these two objects, we refer to them as what? Rays. So the measurement between them becomes an angle. The value we get when we measure between these two objects that meet at a point becomes an angle. That's what. When we are talking about rays. Now, when we're talking about arms, when I have one arm, let's say I have an arm this way. This is the hand, the fingers. These are the fingers. Then this is my lower arm. Then the upper arms, they meet the lower arm this way. This is your elbow. So anytime you turn your arms, both the lower and the upper arms, since they meet at a joint, that's the elbow. Anytime you turn them, the measurement between these two arms, as you turn them, that measurement is what we call angle. So this is an angle. So this is an arm, the lower arm, this is the upper arm. So anytime you turn it, that measurement is called angle. You can turn it this way. Okay, let me erase. You can turn it this way, and still an angle will be formed here. Good. Or you can choose to turn it this way, and still an angle will be formed here. So anytime you turn your arms, the measurement between them, or when you measure between them, any value you obtain, that value becomes an angle. Good. So that is what with regards to arms. Now let's go to that of the rays. Now, when I have a flat surface, which is a plane, and I have a horizontal object, or an object in horizontal dimension. Then I have another vertical object that meets this horizontal object at a point. It forms an angle. So trying to measure the distance between these two objects that meet this horizontal and vertical rays. So this is called ray. We shall be looking at parts of angle. Ray. So as they meet at a point, this is the point I'm talking about. And we shall be, very soon we'll get to know the name of this point. So this is an angle. Good. Now this rays can either meet at a point in this manner, they still form an angle. Once they meet at a point, they form an angle. It can be vertical, or it can be horizontal. Let me say if I have this horizontal line, two horizontal lines meeting on a plane. Once there is a point to distinguish them, an angle is formed. However, you can't get an angle on one ray. No. The rays must be two. So let's take note. If I have this one ray or something like this, no angle is formed. No angle. No angle. This is an angle. This is an angle. So let's take note of that. An angle must be formed whenever two rays meet at a point. And whenever two arms meet at a point, an angle is formed. But if one arm cannot form an angle, one ray cannot form an angle. So let's take note of that. Good. So these are some of the examples of angles. So angles are formed when arms turn. Once you turn your arm to any direction, an angle is formed. And once two rays meet at a point, an angle is formed. So let's take note of that. Good. So that is what. So let's look at how angles are formed. Formation of an angle. As I said earlier, in the definition of an angle is formed when arms meet. One. So let's take the first point. When arms turn. When arms turn. Turn. Turns. Once you turn your arm, an angle is formed. So that is what? One of the aspects. As I've stated earlier, if I choose to turn my arm this way, this is a point, this is the elbow. So this is an arm, this is another arm. As I've turned, if you want to turn your arm, an angle is formed. So this is how angles are formed. Angle. So angle is formed when arms turn. So you can turn your arm this way and still an angle is formed. Okay, since we understand this, let me raise this aspect. Just demonstrate this for you to understand how angles are formed. Good. Now let's use rays, as I've explained earlier. An angle is formed when two rays meet at a point. And these two rays can either be horizontal and vertical, or horizontal, vertical. There must be what? Two rays meeting at a point. So if I have vertical ray, horizontal ray, meeting at a point, on a plane, meeting on a plane, they form a what? Angle. So this is an angle. When I have another ray here, meeting another ray at a point, though they are all horizontal, but still they form an angle. When I have another ray here, meeting another ray, though they are all vertical, but once they meet at a point, an angle is what? Formed. So let's take note of that. Angles are formed whenever two rays meet at a point, and they can either be horizontal or vertical, or they can be horizontal and vertical. But one ray cannot form an angle. So let's take note of that. For instance, if I just have one ray this way, it can never form an angle since there is no point. Since there is no two rays meeting at a point. So this is not an angle. This one too is not an angle. If I have only one arm this way, an angle cannot be formed. So let's take note of that. Good. Now let's look at parts of an angle. Now, from our explanation to formation of an angle, we say an angle is formed when two rays meet on a plane. Now let's look at an angle is formed when arms turn. Once you turn your arm, an angle is formed because your arm is made. You have the upper and the lower arms. So, and the elbow that's the meeting point of the two arms. So your elbow becomes the point where two arms meet. So once you turn your arms to any direction, an angle is formed. So here, let's look at the parts. So if I have an arm, this is my upper arm, and this is the lower arm. As you turn it, there is a point here, and that's the elbow. So an angle is formed. So here, this is the angle. Now this is we call this one ray. We call this one too ray. Okay. So this is we call this one vectors. Vectors. The points at which two or more rays, the points at which rays meet on a flat surface. That point is what we call vectors. So this is vectors. Let me try to get you a picture of the path. Okay. So as you can see, I'm trying to, as you can see, but I'm trying to at least do something about the image. Okay. So this is the picture. This is part of an angle. We have the vectors, we have the ray, this ray, and we have the angle, as you can see. I'm trying to take away this part from the distance. So let me bring you another picture. Okay, so you can see the picture on the board. We have parts of angles, and the corner point of an angle is called vectors. The two straight sides are called arms. So we have the arm here, we have the arm, we have the vectors. This one I was trying to describe an acute angle. We have different types of angles which we shall be talking about in our next lesson. All right. Okay. So that is roughly, these are what we have done today. Today we've looked at angles, the definition of an angle, which we say an angle, it measures between arms. It measures between arms. Or an angle measures the amount of turns, or it measures the amount of what? Arms turns. Or an angle measures the amount of, or an angle measures between. So today we look at definition. We say an angle, it measures the amount of what? Amount between two rays that meet at a point or meet on a plane. And then we look at how come by the word angle. We said the word angle comes from the Latin word angulus, which means crux or corner. We also look at formation of angles, which we said angles are formed when arms turn, or angles are formed when two rays meet on a plane at a point. And we also look at parts of angles. We look at the ray. This is the drawing as you can see on the board. We have the ray, we have the vectors, and we have the angles. So in our next lesson, we'll be looking at types of angles, and then there are various formulas and how to calculate them. That's basically what we shall be looking at in our next lesson. Thank you very much for today's lesson.